Hello, it's the Anfield app with me, Gareth Roberts. A little bit later this week, so we're going to look at the Crystal Palace win and we're going to look at the Man City game tomorrow night. But hugely satisfying win, obviously, at Palace. Jurgen Klopp's 100th Premier League match in charge, and then this Champions League cracker at Anfield to get stuck into. So with me to get stuck into all that is Dan Fieldsend, Rick McEvoy, and the Liverpool Echo's James Pearce and Paul Senior. So top team to talk about. A top team. Pre-match, Paul, when the team come out, and just the general feel around it as well. I don't know whether this is just me and maybe my ongoing problems with negativity, but I just felt that it had a bit of a feel of a sort of perfect storm for a bad result. So, you know, international break, early kick-off on the telly, not the best pitch or conditions, 3 former players in Kelly, Sacco and Benteke on the pitch for them, and then of course, you know, our pantomime villain Roy Hodgson lurking with intent in the opposite dugout. You know, all of those things set off a few little warning bells for me that it could be, you know, not the best day for us possibly. And when you thought about City to come as well, you just thought, and then the way the game actually started as well, all of those things, you just thought, could be one of them days.
Yeah, I think as Liverpool fans, we're probably guilty of working ourselves up a little bit much about them sorts of things, to be honest. You know, we've had so many times where instances like that where old players are coming back, old managers, whatever, and we haven't managed to quite do the business. The thing is, this is a different Liverpool time and a different era, different Liverpool squad with a different Liverpool manager. I think what does happen is you sort of get the measure of just how good this Liverpool side is to be able to perform not particularly great. Everything sort of going against you in the first half, and then to respond in the second half like we do. Obviously, there's a bit of there's a few circumstances around Mane and whatnot, which you know we can debate all you like, but we respond perfectly in terms of taking them off, finding a way to win the game. And for me, it's a good dress rehearsal, because I was just saying on Talking Reds then as we recorded that when I was growing up, my dad always said, well, that's why Man United win the title, lad. And because they find a way to win from poor positions, and that's what the Liverpool side has done. And we've done it before this season. So I'm treating between now and the end of the season in the league now as a dress rehearsal for a title assault next season, and they're the sort of wins you've got to pick up to win them.
Yeah, I think that's all fair enough, isn't it, from Paul, Dan? And like, you know, when you looked at it though, and you're thinking about, you know, are we going to win the game here? Because that's what you do, isn't it? You know, before an actual ball's kicked, you're looking at the team, you're looking at the bench, and you're trying to work it all out in your head before anything's actually taken place. And I think when you looked at the midfield, Liverpool's midfield, you thought, well, maybe looks a little bit workman-like, you know, those 3 together. Also as well, when you're looking at the bench and you see Klein there, obviously down to Gomez's injury, and it almost a positive and a negative at the same time, in that, you know, a positive to see him there, and it's great that he's back, and it's great that he could be involved soon, but a negative in that, you know, he's not really had a practice run anywhere, and we were, you know, a Trent injury away from seeing him on the pitch. So again, there was sort of, even that as well could set a bit of a chain of negativity going, if you like, when you saw the team.
Yeah, and especially with the news we just had now, the Matip injury.
Yeah.
We don't want to look too frail at the back. I think you've hit the nail on the head with that workman-like midfield. And it always does look that way when you've got Milner and Henderson in there together. But I think Klopp's kind of expected this Palace team to play the way they did. You know, that he was looking for us to win them second balls, and that's what them lads were in there for. And our threat, and it'll probably be the same against City, and we'll talk about that later, it's going to come from them full-backs, from the wide areas. So I'm kind of expecting that similar kind of style of play to come tomorrow. You know, we're going to just look to control the midfield and don't give City a chance to play. Even though they were probably protecting more against Palace, yeah, I feel like the team picked itself, you know, on Saturday, especially with Robertson and Arnold. They looked, especially as the second half progressed, they were our 2 biggest threats getting forward. It was coming from them wide areas.
And James, just to sort of get into it then a bit more, in a bit more detail as well. The first half, I mean, It didn't start off the best for Liverpool. The tempo wasn't really there. The passing was a little bit predictable, and also as well, I think there is a little bit of a concern there in how Palace got at us a little bit, because it was no surprise, was it, in how they approached the game. Deep and compact, looking to spring on us, long balls to Benteke with Zaha latching onto flicks. We've seen that straight away. First few minutes, there's one there. Trent clears it up that time. But then, obviously, a similar ball leads to the penalty and leads to them getting into the lead. But also, as well, it's something we've seen, and lots of people picked up on this, it's something we've seen against Manchester United as well, almost as though, teams are looking at this now and saying, well, that's a little bit of a weak spot for Liverpool. So that's a bit of a concern, isn't it?
Yeah, there's no question that Palace had targeted that area. It was a definite ploy, hitting those diagonals into that space between Trent and I think it was Matip. Most of the time on that side, and it was an area of weakness. I thought Trent had a really tough first half against Wilfried Zaha. There's no disgrace in that. Zaha is an excellent player, but that was a real worry. And then obviously when you gift them the penalty and the early lead, it was perfect for Palace in terms of the way that they were set up to then drop off, let Liverpool have the ball, as you said, be compact and try and frustrate them. And yeah, it was probably as poorly as Liverpool had played in a first half for a long time in terms of both defensively and going forward. I think there was no real redeeming features to that first half performance. Lack of spark and creativity in midfield. The front three were very quiet, and I must admit I was concerned at that point, because Palace, as we know, whatever you say about Hodgson, he knows how to organise a team. It's not particularly pretty, but at that stage they were doing a job on the Reds.
Yeah, I mean, and Rick, lots of talk really about Trent's performance and about his struggles first half. Some ideas kicking around as well, being sent towards us with our Trent interview, which is out there as well, about being kinder towards Scouse players and all this sort of thing. I don't think that's necessarily true. Certainly not from us. I feel that we're fairly critical when we need to be of all players. But on Trent, I mean, he is a 19-year-old lad. He is the lad who's been transformed into a fullback, if you like. So mistakes are going to happen, and he's going to have to learn from them. But B as well, I watched the game back and I wonder whether just giving him stick for what happens in the first half is fair, because there's a number of things to look at. I think in that, is Liverpool's pressing good enough? Was the energy high enough? It seemed very easy for Palace to get a ball to Benteke, is what I'm saying at times. And then equally, he's caught wrong side, but then, you look at some of the other players involved in the passages of play just before, Van Dijk doesn't react well, Henderson is beaten in the air, things like that. So is it a bit simplistic to be pinning it all on a poor performance from Trent again, which is what a lot of people are saying?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked before about perhaps a bit of leeway you'll get with young players. The big question show the other week, where if you think if we've gone out and spent 20 million on a young right back from Spain or Italy and he's had the last few games that Trent has, then maybe he's getting a lot more stick. But the key points are one you've just said there. It's not all on him. The first 10 minutes or so they tried pinging up a few long balls to Benteke on Van Dijk's side, and Van Dijk just cleaned him out, just won everything. Didn't take him long to switch to Matip. Matip was perhaps, for my liking, a bit too passive. He wasn't really going right up against Benteke, trying to win those.
There was one, wasn't he, where he goes as though he's going to challenge him and then decides to back off. Yeah, as though he just decides he can't win. He's actually taller than Benteke as well, I think.
I think that it is a systemic issue. If you're in that backroom team and you're looking at the 2 goals we conceded against United, then they come from long balls into a big striker to flick on into that channel. And also, Zaha's movement. Zaha's a top 6 player minimum, right? Playing in a terrible team, but he he's got really good movement, he's got really good pace. It's not, every fullback who's going to be able to get the better of him in every situation. So Trent actually needs a bit of protection in those, or anyone playing right back's going to need a little bit of protection in those circumstances, whether it's your midfield dropping to help him out, whether it's your central midfield, say you're 6, and one of your centre halves compressing the big target man, one from each side trying to win the ball. There's a lot of different ways you can protect your fullback in that instance, and we tend not to.
I think it's no surprise though, Gareth, that sides are going to be targeting the right hand side. Now you've got a £75 million centre half and one of the best left backs in the Premier League at the moment playing on the left, or you've got a 19-year-old right back and our poorer choices at centre half on the right hand side. So Liverpool, I think, have got to be a little bit more savvy with that, and I think Milner is maybe the reason. I'm struggling to put this. I think Milner should be playing the other side. Basically, there's a lot of protection there with Robertson. Mane gets back a bit more than Salah does, and obviously you've got Van Dijk sweeping up on the left hand side. If you were to switch Milner's right hand side, you could then cover Trent a bit more. I think Andy Robertson in games Milner's playing is looking like one of the best left backs in the world, but it helps because you've got someone doing your dirty work for you. Milner's such a selfless player that he's allowing Robertson to perform. Now, don't get me wrong, maybe I'm looking at this in a negative point of view where Klopp's going, I'm playing Milner there to release Robertson to do all the damage he's doing, and that's how we get the goal, the first goal. But sometimes I think maybe in the game against Manchester City, if Emre Can's a doubt, you maybe look at Milner to cover Trent and take the risk on Robertson a little bit. There's going to be times where we're under the cosh. Let, Wijnaldum or whoever's going to play that left-hand side of midfield, cover Robertson a bit more, but put someone with an experienced head next to Trent where he can... second half when we go 3 at the back, you see the best of Trent. He's unbelievable. But I think putting one man in that 3 in midfield, you need to keep Trent in mind against more offensive sides. So that would be my move. I would just switch sides with Milner.
I think as well, if you think back to last season, probably when Wijnaldum was actually at his most effective for us, he was playing on the left of midfield. You had Milner at full back, you had Coutinho wide left, and you had Wijnaldum playing on that side. And from what I've seen this season, I just don't think he's been as effective playing out on the right. Obviously not out on the right, but the right of the 3. So that seems like a perfectly sensible solution.
Klopp a couple of times, sorry Dan, has done that sub. I remember the difference it made at Stoke away this season, where he does a double sub with Milner and Salah, and all of a sudden we're in the game, and it was just Milner's ability to allow other players to play. Now, James Milner, the James Milner I sort of not grew up watching, but the Milner in your mind is 13-14, comes off the bench, he's a flying winger against City, and I think he deserves a bit of credit because there's no ego about him. He's just allowing other players to play. The only thing I would say is in bigger games I've seen Milner sort of not have the legs to compete. But if Chan's injured, I would consider Milner right for City. Henderson as the 6, with whoever else you want to play.
Just on that City point there, no, I don't want to get tied up on it, but they played, was it Laporte played left back against Everton, which he's not going to be overlapping and bombing on. He is fundamentally a centre half, which might ease things up on Trent potentially. I suppose we'll have to wait and see on that point, but you're right that he has been getting targeted a lot. I just hope that's not the case against City with Laporte being there, like I say, no overlaps.
Fabian Delph's been back in training and hasn't seen the light of day, and obviously he's been first choice left back for Manchester City all season. I wonder whether this game might be the return of Fabian Delph, which I'd much rather see Laporte, a centre half, a very good one at that, playing left back. But I think if Delph comes in, Manchester City is stronger.
I just wonder whether we think it's a bit of a concern that it's not worked out earlier, really, that that the tactic, Benteke, Zaha, etc. Appreciate both of those are good at certain things in the game. Like, it's hard, obviously, to beat Benteke in the air. Zaha will make a fool out of a lot of fullbacks. He's a good player, but it just seemed to me that at times there wasn't the obvious plan to deal with them. So you see, there's one where Matip and Henderson are almost running into each other to challenge Benteke, which is not ideal. Later on in the game, as you say, obviously switch system, and you see Van Dijk winning some headers against Benteke then. But it's just that almost the on-pitch management really that they couldn't sort it out earlier. What I'm saying is you could see the goal coming before the goal arrives. Karius makes a good save, and I say there's the one Trent clears up early on as well. So there was a few warning signs and they didn't take heed of them.
It was a little bit different than Man United, who were just going straight down the middle. They seem to be going wide, trying to spread us a bit and getting an early ball into Benteke, and that was working. And especially you've seen that first bit of the second half, that's paying off for them. The difference that seemed to happen is when we went 3 at the back, is that you could allow Van Dijk to go with the danger of the knock-on being intercepted by the third centre half, which was Lovren. So there was times where Lovren was going and winning it, but we were almost playing a sweeper. It was I'll stay, you go. We'll try and win that first ball because it wasn't winning. I thought there was a period at the beginning of the season where I was a bit concerned about Klopp's in-game management, but I think since the turn of the year he's got a lot right. This one especially, it's going 3 at the back. Obviously he brings Lallana and Oxlade-Chamberlain on for is it Mane and who's the other one? Wijnaldum. But then he's forced to change again. Now when Lallana pulls up, he's got no other midfield options really to turn to, and his immediate thought is, okay, how do I win this midfield? I'm going to let the full-backs go and I'm going to take the risk of 3 at the back. He's got it spot on, absolutely spot on, and that, I think the influence of the full-backs is how you win the game.
One of the things on that, I was actually surprised that pretty much before the trainers have even got on the pitch, Lovren stripped and ready. It almost to me looked like he was planning on going 3 at the back anyway.
Yeah.
It was just maybe not quite as quick, but Lovren looked ready to go.
Yeah,
as soon as that injury happened.
Yeah, he was already stripped off, and like he was going to come on, and that certainly played a big part in Liverpool winning the game, because as I said earlier on, it did free Trent up to not worry so much about getting back and dealing with things defensively. Just go forward, and he whipped in some absolutely quality.
It was almost Beckham-esque, James, wasn't it?
Yeah,
some of them balls.
Yeah, there was a couple when, quite rightly, he should be asking him why is someone not getting on the end of that, because there were some great deliveries. I think Trent probably is a bit of an easy target. I think from the United game and at Palace, I think sometimes people overlook what he does provide and focus too much on why there are weaknesses or whatever in his game. And Robbie, you said earlier on about I get accused as well of going easy on him because he's a local lad, but you go easy on him because he's 19 years old. I think you look at the Champions League this week. What other 19-year-old kid is starting in the Champions League quarter-final? Yeah. It's the other people say, but he makes mistakes. Of course he's going to make mistakes.
You're absolutely right. I mean,
just absolutely crazy. Most kids his age are still in the academy, dreaming of one day making the step.
And you've got to allow him to make them mistakes.
Exactly,
like you say, he's 19. We've got to look at this 10 years from now. He will captain Liverpool because he wants it. He's shown he can achieve what he wants. So let him get the mistakes out of his system, like he's doing at the minute.
People are so keen to praise people like Ryan Sessegnon, at Fulham, tremendous footballer this year, playing left side, left wing, no responsibility on him. Trent Alexander-Arnold's got to think about the fact that he's allowing Mo Salah to play, and also he's got to influence. He's got to influence the attack. He's got so much more to think about. Everyone's so excited by Sessegnon, but he's turning up, but he's doing it in the Championship. This lad's doing it in the Champions League, as James rightly says. He's going to play in one of the biggest fixtures in the Champions League in the last 10 years. So there's no comparison for me. The delivery, the fact that he's got to add something to this Liverpool side, and you can stand out at Fulham, you can stand out in the Championship, but he's standing out offensively in one of the best attacking units in the Premier League.
Is he getting him back? When Klein comes back, is he getting back in that team? Because Trent, like you say, they are Beckham-esque, some of them. He did one, even a defensive clearance in the second half. It was outside of the boot towards Mane. And you're not getting that from Klein, let's be honest. I like Klein, he's a good 7 out of 10 player. But Arnold's so much more fluid going forward, and we're dangerous with him in the team.
Also, though, there's a strength of character there, isn't there, James, as well? You're talking about a young lad, as you say, but he could do the thing where he's like, I was at fault there, and you see him do a foul throw as well, and like less players who aren't as mentally strong as what I'm saying might basically lose the shit there, and have an awful game full stop. But for him to be able to bounce back and be so pivotal to what Liverpool were doing second half, as you say, putting in loads of great balls, that shows something about him as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. That strength of character is what has enabled him to make the rapid steps forward that he has done over the last 18 months. When you think back, it wasn't even that long ago that he was called into that pre-season friendly. I think it was at Swindon, wasn't it, in 2015, and no one had really heard of this 16-year-old kid or whatever who'd made the leap up to the 18s, and you think how far he's come in such a short period of time, and that's one of his big strengths, the ability not to dwell on things. Because the other thing in this Klopp team, it's not as if he plays safe and he can just do the basics and just try and so much is expected of him going both ways, that it's such a demanding role, and the fact that Klopp keeps on picking him is testament to what he's produced this season. There's been so much more to admire than to criticise. The one thing that did surprise me on the weekend was I thought we probably would have seen 20 minutes, half an hour in Nathaniel Klein. More than anything, just because of the schedule Liverpool have got, because all season Klopp has repeatedly talked about not wanting to overburden Trent, and how obviously for a long time he was able to rotate Gomez and Trent. He can't do that now, obviously, with Gomez out for 3 to 4 weeks. And I think it's a massive ask for Trent to play. Obviously Palace, he played 90 minutes. Now City, Merseyside derby, second leg against City, and I just thought if you're going to throw Klein into one of those games, then Palace was the one to do it. So it's going to be interesting to see how Klopp kind of handles that, because
I mean, what's the feedback been from what you've heard, James, about how he's done because he's played under 23 football, hasn't he, Klein, and he's been kicking about. He's been involved in training sessions as well. Obviously, he wouldn't be on the bench even as an emergency if he wasn't capable of coming on. Yeah. So, is there any feeling on how close he is to form and fitness, if you like? Well,
I mean, I asked Klopp last week, and he said he just doesn't have rhythm, as he said. But the problem, how can you get rhythm unless you play? So that was. I found that a bit strange. I think probably it was maybe dictated by the fact that obviously the Lallana injury and the changes that Klopp felt he had to make just because of the way that the game went. But because I think Klein is going to be needed at some point. I think even if it's just off the bench over the next 10 days, because I think just mentally as well as physically for a 19-year-old kid, it's going to be absolutely gruelling.
Yeah, I mean, just ease Klein back in the Merseyside derby. It's only Everton, isn't it?
It sort of shows us where we are as well, though, doesn't it? I mean, the Liverpool squad, if you go back even 2 years ago, would we have been looking at players like Conor Randall or John Flanagan now? No, we've got 3 options at right back. Joe Gomez gets injured with England. We've got a 19-year-old kid coming in to replace him. Okay, he's 19, but he's top class, and we don't need to say any more on what we feel about him. But then Nathaniel Klein's back as well. It just shows, I mean, where we are now. The sort of, I know this has added to the wage bill and stuff like that, but Liverpool's got so much more strength and depth that we can have a mini crisis at right back. But the worst thing that can happen is you bring in an England international right back who mightn't have had enough minutes just yet. I'm sound with that.
Yeah, it's not too bad, is it?
Well, that's if you think back just a couple of years, if someone says to you, right, you've got a full England international or a full international fullback, right, who's going to miss virtually a whole season, and would anyone around this table go, oh no, we'll be sound? It's just unbelievable that we got this far.
Can any position in the pitch that now for me? You've got international footballers covering everywhere, so obviously we're hearing about the news about Matip. Okay, sounds, we'll bring in Lovren, that's fine, but what happens if anything happens to Lovren? Well, our fourth choice, our break glasses, Ranyard Klavan now, and it's not some kid with no minutes. It's the captain of his country, So this is.
And one he was playing very well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it was unfortunate at the time to lose his place.
All right. Well, if we look more at the sort of the attacking in the first half, then Rick, come to you up first on this one. I mean, fair to say that Sadio Mane has a mad afternoon all round, involved in sort of everything good and bad and in between. He's clearing efforts off the line. He's booked for diving. He should probably have a penalty. He scores a goal. But in that first half, there was a frustration around how Liverpool were playing and the intensity and sort of passes were going astray. But what was good about Liverpool mainly involved Mane, didn't it? I mean, even you know, a frustration for me watching it was a lot of the passing was sort of sideways and obvious and back to the centre half or back to another midfielder. But you saw a pass from Mane first couple of minutes. He finds Trent in between two defenders, and that when he drops into that deeper role, that's what he's capable of, and that sort of sets him apart from other lads who are trying to create stuff in midfield. Certainly that three that we saw on Saturday. Yeah,
it was quite frustrating. Probably the first 25 minutes, especially once you start seeing the passing going astray. To be fair, Palace were very well organised, like James said earlier. Whatever you say about Hodgson, he can
very physical as well.
Yeah, but they what was frustrating me, I didn't think we were looking to play many killer passes, and it got to the stage where probably after about 25 minutes, when you're watching Roberto Firmino having his like third shot from 25 yards, but actually thinking about it again, looking at the shape of the game, I think that's how we actually managed to create the spaces we use so much better later on in the game. First half they were just sitting in, and it was taking things like Mane dropping into the 10 and playing the pass that no one else is seeing to create any kind of space, to create any kind of gap in their defence. But I'm thinking by Firmino having those shots, by us taking on opportunities outside the box, it meant that they couldn't just sit on 8-10 yards in a nice little row. Someone had to come out to address those players taking those shots, which then, if you look at the 2 goals we score, I think the combined distance from goal is 12 yards. So if they're just sat on the 6-yard line, 8 yards out, whatever, it's very hard to score both of those goals. But just by the way we're trying to move them about, it's a lot of sideways and a lot of long shots that aren't going to create anything, but they've got to deal with them. And that creates the space for everyone else to exploit later in the half, later on in the game, and in the second half.
What's good about that, though, is years ago when we played a team like Palace, we had a tendency to match them. It wasn't that long ago we were throwing Stephen Corker up front, to try and match a team at the same style. But the tactical switch, like you say, that Klopp made to go free at the back and push the players further forward, it's the right decision. It's not one of, we've lost our heads, let's do things totally differently. Like I say with Corker, so I'd say that's a positive, that we kept our game and we kept playing the Liverpool way.
Oh yeah, I mean the keeping hold of the ball. I know we were a bit sloppy at times in that first half, but we were all about just moving them around, just keep them guessing. I know it can get frustrating watching it, but how many times has Klopp over the last 6 months talk about patience? That's one of his big things. We'll just keep doing it.
That's a newfound thing for Liverpool at the moment, I think, is patience. I mean, if you look back even just 12 months, if Liverpool didn't get the first goal within 20 minutes, we'd be losing our heads, especially at home. But now I think Liverpool fans have just got belief that this Liverpool side can score, and I think that's the main thing, is that it's so full of goals. So when you go back to 1-1, I only see one winner then. There's still opportunities afforded to Palace, but in my mind I can only see Liverpool winning, because something's going to drop to a player of absolute quality, whether that's Firmino, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Salah or Mane. There's going to be opportunities. I mean, you see the amount of time that Mo Salah feels like he's got in the box at the moment, how much time he's got on the ball. That is unbelievable what he does. The lack of panic. You see Christian Benteke with 2 absolute gilt-edged opportunities. There was times where Christian Benteke would take a touch, set himself and bang it and score, and it just shows you how confidence is so important for top-level footballers, and Mo Salah's just got it in abundance.
I mean, for a game that it's widely accepted and Klopp calls it a dirty win, there's actually. I haven't watched it back. I don't think there's a huge period of the game where Liverpool are actually abject or awful, if you like, because you look at Mane's penalty shout. There is, I mean, I'm not sure what the big debate about it is really. There's 100% contact there. There's a little bit of a delay until he goes down, and I think in slow motion it looks awful. In real time, it looks a penalty.
It is a penalty. The way he reacts is why it's not a penalty. Yeah. But I don't know how he's meant to react. Is he meant to just point to his foot and put his hand up? the problem is that there's a refereeing problem there for me, and I don't know what the solution is. Is that I think there was a season back, maybe Coutinho should have went down for something, and it was almost like, what am I meant to do? Am I just meant to go contact their ref? That's a penalty, because you can't, because he's in such an attacking position, isn't he? That if he stands with his foot on the ball, almost Andre Kanchelskis, like he's not gonna be given the thing. So I think if there needs to be something where players can almost signal that needs to be a foul. But Mane, and I think, right, if I'm playing football, I'm doing exactly what Mane does. You know, I'm trying to make the most out of the fact that someone just threw the boot over mine. That being said, the way it's too theatrical, isn't it? I can sympathise with all parties on this one a little bit. It is a penalty, but the way he reacts and the sort of delay makes it not a penalty. I just think that there needs to be something where you can go, that's a pen, I don't want to dive. What does he do? Pick the ball up, you know?
Yeah. And also, how are you meant to deal with that? If you're stood, even if you're on your heels a little bit, and someone clatters into your shin, what way is your body meant to move?
That's what the referee, Swarbrick, he just had a mad afternoon.
He did, yeah.
He was just going around me. I don't think he'd ever seen football before. You know, because if he's made that precedent that it's not a pen and he's dived, so he's handballed it later, Mane. How can you not book him for that? I just don't get it. And the Palace fans can probably be aggrieved, but you know, they think it's sound to sing sign on, so made up, they got beaten in the end.
I think there's a degree of sensibility there from the referee, and I think this hasn't really been touched on. I don't think you can send him off for Sadio Mane thinking it's a foul. This isn't a deliberate handball, but he's threw his arm off. It's not
a goal scoring opportunity.
No. I think he's been quite sensible, the ref, and I reckon he'll probably get punished by the assessors or whatnot for what he's done. But I think he's gone, I can't send him off for that. It was marginal. He probably thinks I've given a foul, or he should have been given a foul. You see footballers do this all the time, but what actually happens is they get the decision that they're looking for. He hasn't given the decision he's looking for. It probably is a foul on Mane. Maybe a little bit soft, but Mane's been stupid. You know, he's lost his head a little bit in the game, but for me, there's got to be a little bit of, you don't send him off for that. It's almost like you tell the manager to take him off. The manager does take him off. You know, if I'm a Crystal Palace fan and I'm on the Crystal Palace equivalent podcast, I'm probably effing and blind. I know it's the referee's decision, but I think the referee's been slightly sensible there and not sending them off.
Well, there's the penalty shout, and then there's the Mane offside goal, which is on the half hour, and then sort of last 10 to 15, James, I felt like Liverpool picked it up a little bit more. Robertson started getting more involved in forward positions. There was a little bit more fight and bite about Liverpool, and you know, we saw Firmino try a few pot shots coming off various player parts and everything else, but Liverpool, those certainly last 10 of the first half, it looked like, you know, they wanted to get a goal before half time.
Yeah, there was an improvement of sorts. I think, you know, Salah started to come alive a little bit as well, didn't he? You know, finally managed to get himself a bit of space, and a couple of times he cut inside onto that left foot, and probably should have done a bit better in terms of stretching Hennessy more than he actually did. I thought Robertson, even when Liverpool were poor, was still the best player. You know, amazing consistency we've seen from him for a few months now that bodes really well for the challenges ahead. With the Mane thing, it was bizarre because, you know, you saw some pundits, I think Match of the Day, you know, labelling him a cheat and a dive or whatever, but acknowledging there'd been contact, and you just, well, how does that work? You know, I think, and the weird thing is, I think if VAR is in force there, he gives a penalty, because I think the replays will show there's contact. And Swarbrick obviously didn't think there was contact. I think the assistant should have helped him out. And, you know, I was sat actually in the stand behind the assistant, and you could see that Swarbrick was looking at the assistant for a bit of guidance. He gave absolutely nothing, even though he had a better view of it than the ref, who's then booked Mane for diving. You know, that's just guesswork really. He didn't have a clue whether there'd been contact or not.
And you mentioned pundits, mate. I mean, you will have seen in similar incidents pundits, including the likes of, you know, Shearer and whoever, saying, "Oh well, when they feel contact, it's fair enough for them to go down." So, you know, this is the sort of the continual hypocrisy around the whole thing, really.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. Because I think Danny Murphy was having a go, I think, at Mane as well, and saying that there's contact, but there's not enough for him to go down. Well, what. You can't. A few weeks ago.
So it's all right to just boot someone in the box.
Yeah,
then.
and then but then if you stay on your feet when you've been clipped, you then get criticised because you're not going to get the penalty unless you go down. So I think the thing that probably did for Mane there was the fact there was that delay. I think it was almost like MacArthur slid in, and there was just that split second where Mane went to play on, and then in his head thought, he's clipped me there, and then went down, and I think that was enough to put the doubt in the referee's mind in terms of diving. In terms of the handball in the second half, I think I thought he'd get sent off for that. I must admit it was, but I agree that it was just common sense, because it wasn't those ones where the player's gone to ground and grabbed the ball to stop Palace attacking. I think he genuinely thought he'd been fouled by Townsend, and I thought it was a foul. It was he was all over him, but. Yeah, but by the same token, I think you'd have been very annoyed as a Liverpool fan if that had happened and the player hadn't been sent off.
We ask as football fans sometimes for common sense, don't we?
Yeah.
And you hear this letter of the law thing. It's common sense. So you've got what you want. Stop crying about it. Do you know what I mean? The referee has used as common sense there, and I think the people are talking about there's no grey area in football. The referee's actually interpreted it that way. So I think he's done all right there. The ref.
I was made up after the game. I was thinking back about all the decisions that have gone, whether it's the Mane penalty, stroke book in, whether it's offside, whatever. And I thought the only one that realistically you could argue he's probably got that completely wrong, like legitimately wrong, is not sending off Mane. Because once he's on a yellow card and he grabs the ball, and I know what we're talking about, common sense, but he's deliberately handled the ball. I was just made up that the one that you'd argue he got wrong went in our favour against Roy Hodgson. I just thought that's poetic.
Well, we'll come on to given the customary ripping to Roy Hodgson, it's got to be done, and it does play a part. But going back then to sort of start of the second half, Liverpool come out obviously much better tempo. The fullbacks much more on the front foot. The front three seeing much more of the ball, and obviously score an early goal second half and changes the flow of the match really. But even that first move, even that move that leads to the goal, you look at who's involved in it, and Mane, Salah and Firmino all involved before Milner does his hugely exaggerated dummy and squares the ball for Mane to score. It felt as though there was a bollocking or something had gone on in the changes, the way they come out second half, didn't it?
I mean, this Liverpool side shouldn't be accepting mediocrity in the first half performance was that they're too good, and at the top of the show, Gareth, you talk about this Liverpool fans sort of feeling everything's against them. I wonder whether that had translated a little bit into the players, but yeah, I think it was pretty clear someone had given them a rocket at half time, whether it be the manager or one of the assistants, but they respond really well. I think there is little tweaks in there. There's no substitute. But there's tweaks, and it's again what we were talking about is releasing the fullbacks, letting them play a little bit more, and it was prominent for me. You were seeing Robertson getting in good areas. Milner obviously for that one. Trent on the other side. Liverpool was starting to get in the game. I thought that maybe in the first half the front three were a little bit spread out, so it was almost like a traditional 4-2-3-1 almost. Whereas Liverpool seem to play with that. I keep using David Moyes' expression, that compact three. They're quite tight together. You were seeing more and more of them in the box, and we find a way. And this Liverpool side continuously, when things are down, finds a way, and it's brilliant to see.
And 15th goal of the season for Mane there, which is not bad for someone being.
Considering he's playing third behind the other two. You've Bobby Firmino and Mo Salah are having brilliant seasons, and Mane was our go-to man, and I think it suited him a little bit as well last season. I think he liked being almost like the big fish at a big club. I think he maybe struggled not being the go-to guy earlier on in the season. He starts off quite well. The goal he gets at Arsenal is tremendous, but I think as time went on, I think when the spotlight started to shine on Mo Salah, I think Mane maybe took a little bit of adjusting to that. But ever since
he's changed position,
he's playing a lot more centrally. I mean, you were seeing him Was it the Watford game? Almost playing as a number 10.
Yeah.
And he's playing extremely well. I think he's got his confidence back now as well. In the game against Burnley, at Burnley, his touch was all over the place. You wouldn't think he was a player that could have won Player of the Year last season. But now he looks invigorated, and I'm looking forward to seeing him against City in the week.
You have to give credit to Klopp for that as well. He's managed that Mane situation perfectly. If you've got a player who's clearly a confidence player out of form, dropping him would have been the worst thing he could have done there, Klopp. But we rode it out as a club, and I think the Porto game is probably where it switched for Mane, and he's got that technique back again. You look at that finish a few weeks ago, he's probably not getting that technique as perfect as it was.
I think it was bothering him though. He scores an absolutely beautiful goal against Burnley, and I think it was still bothering him in time after that. But we've referenced rhythm so far already on the show, and I think he's a player that affects most. I mean, he seems to have that back. He seems to have his confidence back. And the other thing is, he seems to have that yard of pace back. That's one thing I was worried about. We've seen so many fast strikers in the past lose their pace on our watch. We've seen Michael Owen do it, we've seen Fernando Torres do it. I was worried as he lost the yard, and obviously you've got a bit of a different measuring stick on the other side now with Mo Salah, who's even quicker. But he seems to be fully fit again now as well. So.
And it's aggression, isn't it? It's not aggression in the typical sense, I'm going to kick, 7 shades out to you. It's aggression that he's going to get that ball in charge of players.
He loves squaring people up, doesn't he?
And he didn't do that for a few weeks, but he is again now, which could hopefully be ominous for Man City.
It was a weird game for Mo, wasn't it, Dan? In that he's not that involved, he's not on the ball that much. We referenced just before about he has a couple of pops first half, but they're not really testing the goalkeeper. But I think there's more love needed for his efforts after Liverpool do score, where he's chesting it down and lofting it early, and it's not far over. But it's the technique to do that was basically a signal that there was nothing wrong with his confidence. He might not have been involved in the game too much, but that little flashpoint, if you like, was just a sign that he's still on his game. Yeah,
his confidence has been ever since he sent Egypt into the World Cup. He's still on cloud nine. He's not come down, and you see that the way he plays. He's still willing to receive the ball in tight areas. He's not scared of getting fouled and whatever. And like you say, that attempt to even try that. Most players, he's received, so when he's chested it, his back's arguably to goal, and he's swiveled and done that shot. A lot of players, if they're chesting the ball back to goal, they're bringing it down, they're laying it off to midfield and whatever. You're right, and not enough love's being given to that effort. If that goes in, you're looking at one of the goals of the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, it was a belter of a moment, and for whatever reason, some teams have gone largely amiss. I wanted to touch on the idea of something we talked about before on podcast. James, put you on the spot here, lad. But just the idea that Liverpool at times can be maybe a little too nice as a collective. So all afternoon we saw Cabaye, who I like, I've got to be honest, just because he's a bit of a bastard, appealing for everything, in the ref's face, arm around the ref, talking down the ref. All game he was doing that. There was a moment there for Liverpool where you saw Kelly all over Van Dijk. Firmino was having his shirt being pulled simultaneously at the same time. And you didn't see anyone in a Liverpool shirt putting their hands up, shouting about it, highlighting it to the referees. I mean, we talked about before, Mane, call it a dive, an embellishment or whatever you want. What he was doing by doing what he was doing was highlighting that something had happened to him. Well, that's not the only way you can highlight it. You got your voice. You can get in the referee's head. You can get in the referee's ear. You can do the same with the people on the line as well. Is there that nasty streak about Liverpool that we saw from the likes of Cabaye?
I think it's a good point. I think Liverpool are too nice. I think when you have to look at the fair play table, I think Liverpool are right. One of the fewer bookings than anyone in the league this season. Obviously, you don't want Liverpool to just go around kicking lumps out of people. They've been a joy to watch this season because of the quality of their football. You don't need to have enforcers as such, but there's no doubt that other teams are much better at exerting pressure on officials than Liverpool are. I think those two examples there, Firmino having his shirt pulled and Kelly trying to swap shirts with Van Dijk, there was barely even an appeal on the pitch. No. And I found that very odd, because also I think if there's a big appeal for the first one, I think it was on Firmino, that then he doesn't give, then I think he's much more likely to give the second one. But because nobody really went to Swarbrick. There was no real pressure on him to do it. In stark contrast, you look at the Mane handball, and you're right, Cabaye is straight in his face, actually waving an imaginary card as well, which should have been a booking in itself for him. But yeah, you do see that a lot, and I think I remember having the same discussion over the 2013-14 team as well, because then similarly when Liverpool were enjoying a fantastic season, it was a joy to watch. There were moments in that season as well where the accusation was they were too nice, and certainly there are those fine margins, aren't they, that can win you points, as it was on the weekend. Those decisions didn't influence the outcome, but yeah, I think as a fan you'd probably want to see a few more of the players making an effort to make their feelings known.
I think there was a point there when around Mane's handball as well, where you need to give Jordan Henderson a little bit of praise. You heard a lot of what I think is a lot of nonsense around Jordan Henderson being the captain of Liverpool, but he's right there, he's right in the ref, he's telling him you should have given a foul to us. He thinks you've given a foul. You can lip read him.
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
And I wonder whether Jordan Henderson's helped talk Mane out of the red there, but it's good to see that little bit of leadership. It's another thing you get from Milner. We're now getting it from Van Dijk. We're talking about a quiet Liverpool team. Okay, they're not in your face. I remember, you go back to the golden days of Man United under Ferguson, and you see the whole team almost surround Andy Dare. So this Liverpool side's not going to do that. But I think that team could almost be like the boy that cried wolf a little bit, where if Liverpool are up in arms over something, it might hold a little bit more weight.
I think that's part of the charm of this Liverpool team as well, though.
Yeah.
We are a very likeable group of players. Okay, maybe we should be a bit more arsehole in certain situations, but the fact we're not, okay, for the club it's a good brand image, but you're drawn to these players. You look at them, you like the style of play, and if we played like that, and we're, I hate to use the word again, but we're arseholes with it, we wouldn't have the same acclaim that we're getting right now.
We talk about, we got beat by the dark arts against Man United a few weeks ago, and I loved all that. I don't particularly like Jose Mourinho, but I like the fact he can win horrendously. There's something quite charming about that from a footballing point of view.
Maybe not every week.
Not every week, no. But the fact he can grind, even though when he gets to Anfield, there's nothing. In 13-14, there's nothing in it for him to win that game. But he's so determined to do it, and he'll do it in the most horrible way possible, and he succeeds in it. I think Liverpool have got a little bit of the dark arts in them, but this game is an example of how Liverpool win it in that way. It's through graft and patience and persistence, but ultimately it's through quality. So we don't have to dog it out like Man United do. We can do it in a nicer way with nicer lads and with better behaved lads. But there's a time and a place for it. I think we might be talking a little bit differently next year when Naby Keita arrives. What I've seen of him at Leipzig, you're going to get someone with a bit of oomph about them. Everything you like. Gareth, I suppose, in the football are a bit of a tackle.
I can't wait for him to come.
I mean, my probably favourite footballer ever for Liverpool in my time is Javier Mascherano because of that. As well. And I think he'll get a little bit of that back. You look back at the days of Benitez coming on the pitch to put his arm around him, all that sort of thing. I can see glimmers of that in our future, but I think it could be timely in terms of it could be, we talk about plan A and plan B. I think we've got a plan B, most sides don't have, but I think that could be another angle for Liverpool, that little bit of bite in midfield, that little bit of nastiness that is missing. I think you might be getting it next season.
I think we're going back on what James and Dan have just said there. You've got, we are really nice. We are just a great bunch of lads. Let's everyone. Well, not everyone likes us because lots of people don't like Liverpool, whoever's playing for them. But specifically, really on James's point about those potential fouls in the box with the shirt pulling and that. The flip side, not even if you don't get that decision, if you're highlighting it to the ref and the referee, even if he just turns around and says, no, there's nothing, or turns around to the Palace lads and said, I've got my eye on you. You've got two circumstances there. Either they think they can get away with whatever they want, so they do something more drastic, and then you can properly go for it and more likely get a pen. Or they've been told they're being watched, so they're not going grabbing hold of Van Dijk's
Well,
shirt.
they weren't shy all afternoon,
No.
were they, Palace? I mean, you saw Benteke a few times on Van Dijk. What's the other lad, the Scott lad in midfield for them, McArthur, is it?
Yeah.
He's leaving a foot in a few times. Quite liked him.
But that's it. The thing about that sort of blew my mind a little bit. Yeah, I get if you're a Palace fan booing Mane after you've seen him get booked for seemingly diving. But Virgil van Dijk took about 3 big hits from Benteke.
Yeah, he was
and
lucky to only get a yellow there.
Eventually only gets a yellow. And then they're booing the hell out of Van Dijk.
Well, seamlessly, I want to talk briefly about Benteke. Obviously, feels a long time since he was a Liverpool player, but it isn't. But on this evidence, it's very good that he isn't, basically. He has 2 great chances, doesn't he, James? There, 2 chances in a minute, really. Both finishes pretty shocking. Liverpool off the hook a little bit there as well. But a boss stat that I found over the weekend as well is that he hasn't scored, Benteke, with his feet since he scored at Anfield last April. He scored 4 with his head since then, but that's some stat, isn't it?
Yeah, unbelievable. And I think his day on Saturday just epitomised his season. Been a massive struggle for him, and both chances were horrendous. The way that he snatched at them, I think. The first one he's missed by an absolute mile as well. It's not as if it's just dropped wide or just over. It's gone kind of 6 or 7 yards wide and just as high. Second one, I had a bit more sympathy with him just because I think it came to him really slowly, and he was waiting and ended up he was leaning back by the time he hit it. But for what was it, £32 million, I think the deal was that Liverpool sold him back to Palace. You think how good that business looks now. I think it was 27 Liverpool pocketed up front, and when you think, I think it was always a gamble when Liverpool bought Benteke. I think it's been well documented that it was very much a Brendan Rodgers signing. The club, Michael Edwards and other people on the recruitment panel had major doubts about it, but with the owners having decided to give Rodgers to stick with him on the back of the way the season before it ended, they backed his judgment. And I think part of that was because they felt that even if things didn't go right, because of his age and what he'd achieved prior to then, that his value would still be decent, and so it's proved. But yeah, it makes you realise how far Liverpool have come in a short space of time when you think it wasn't that long ago, that they were pinning their hopes on Benteke and believed that he was the plan B, as Rodgers used to call him, that they needed to make that next step. And now, you see Benteke struggling massively in a team battling to stay in the league. And I think you touched upon it earlier about things that made you worried going into the game, with the international break, the build-up not being great, the lunchtime kick-off, it being away, and obviously the former Liverpool contingent was part of that. But Benteke had an absolute nightmare, and Sakho was no better. When you think there's still a section of Liverpool fans that believe that Sakho was harshly dealt with, and that he remains the solution to defensive ills and all the rest of it. And then I think the sight of Sakho, where I'm not sure what he was doing for the winning goal.
Scrambling around on the floor.
he was on his backside by the time that Salah tucked that one away, and didn't cover himself in glory. And you think that was on a day when Liverpool's front three as well, only briefly kind of spluttered into life. So God knows how much Sakho would have struggled if those three had been on top of their game.
I think them 2 players that James references there are sort of the issues that we've had with they're all our problems of yesteryear almost. The indicated, so they're almost like you say this Liverpool side now, and we used to talk so much about the transfer committee and people like that. They don't get it wrong anymore because the project's so clear, the plan's so clear. These signings, and maybe Sakho aside, but Benteke is one where they're almost like what Arsenal are doing at the moment. Oh, he scored a load of goals in the Premier League last season, so he'll do for us. There was that Liverpool side of Brendan Rodgers that never suited. How can Christian Benteke be almost like a replacement for Daniel Sturridge or for Luis Suarez? We're talking now about Naby Keita and looking like the perfect piece of a a jigsaw that's ever improving almost.
Well, the most the starkest one for me is when you're looking at it in the way you're talking about is if you look at who our number 9 is now, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Stylistically.
Yeah, exactly, because we talk all the time about him being absolutely perfect for what we want, for what Klopp wants. And Benteke was as you say, well, he can do a job. He's got a track record. He can do that, but he's bought for the wrong reasons, isn't he? And it ends up showing.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm saying. So you look at Arsenal, who are almost like reactionary at the moment, and I would say that's where Liverpool were when they signed Benteke. They're a side that's reacting to a poor season previously. That it's almost like, well, he's scoring goals in the Premier League, and we need someone who can score goals in the Premier League. Whereas now we've got a project, and you look at our transfer targets. You talk about Jorginho. You talk about, obviously we signed Naby Keita. The players were being linked with the lad at Leipzig, Timo Werner. So I look at Werner and I go, stylistically, is he the right fit for Liverpool? Because he's not Bobby Firmino. But I suppose as now this project expands, you look into different options. You know, you look at them Trent Alexander and Andy Robertson balls that are being thrown in the other day. He's maybe someone you can turn to if it's not working for Bobby, or you want to drop Bobby in the old to influence things a little bit more. But at the time with Benteke, I mean, he scores 10 league goals for Liverpool, which is, you know, it's not exactly it's not Balotelli bat. He does okay. He scores, I think he scores a couple of winners that season around the Christmas time as well. So it was all right for him. But in terms of the short space of time since he's left, I think, what was it, 1.5 seasons since he's been gone now, just how far we've gone and how far he's regressed as well in that time, it's remarkable.
He scored like 2 this season. Two goals.
He had that nightmare, didn't he?
The penalty.
He had Frank de Boer there at the beginning of the season. I don't think quite fancied him, and then he takes the penalty off someone else. You know, Milivojevic, who scores.
Oh, awful, yeah.
Who scores the penalty for Palace? I think he's scored 7 goals from penalties this season. He takes the ball off him. I think he was almost trying to throw himself back into form a little bit, but it just shows how bad it's gone for him. They said on Match of the Day something, he's had like 28 big chances where he's been 1-on-1 with a goalkeeper, and he's only scored 2 of them in the time at Palace.
That was always a thing when he was at Liverpool, though. Yeah. You'd seen someone threading a ball through for him, and if he was a 1-on-1, if he's got 20 yards to run and finish, he was just like, no, he's not scoring that.
It's to sympathise with him a little bit. There was a time at Villa where you'd see him break the line and get in behind and slot. He was obviously always great in the air, but he was reasonably quick for a big fella. He was a good footballer, but it fell apart. I think Liverpool has almost ruined his career in a sense.
It's like James says, he was going to be a plan B, but like Klopp's way of thinking, if your plan A is good enough, you don't need a plan B. He's polished Firmino into the perfect player. You look at what he did on that 94th minute, where he's tracking back and he's sliding in at left back.
Yeah.
Who's doing that in Europe? What about number 9? Is Lewandowski doing that? There's no other striker in Europe who's doing that.
It's only Messi, maybe.
Yeah. He loves a slide tackle, Messi, doesn't he?
Conscious of time and the fact that we haven't even talked about the City game yet, which we were supposed to on this podcast. But I was going to ask you about Karius, but I mean, I think it's fair to say I can't see anyone having an alternative view really. That, you know, he did pretty well, makes a couple of good saves, and is now in a hugely different place to where he was not so long ago. And I mean, I was quite surprised really to see Graham Souness on the telly over the weekend, still sort of questioning him and saying, you know, there's still big question marks around them. There's probably some, but to say the big, I'm not so sure. I think in the run he's had now, it feels like both players and fans are trusting him a lot more now.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, the save he makes with his chest, you know, he's just got his body there. There's a bit of Schmeichel in that about him. The only thing for me is I'm a great believer in. You could even put Mo Salah into this bracket, I suppose. But if you can improve on a player in any position, I'll take it. Do you know what I mean? So if Liverpool are going in for Alisson from Roma in the summer, I don't know if that's true or not, but say they were to acquire
James.
I'm not putting that pressure on you, James. But no, say Liverpool are in for Alisson in the summer. This is Brazil's number 1. You look at Edison at Manchester City. He's keeping them out of the Brazil side. So if we can go out and we can buy a goalkeeper for 75 million quid or something, I'm taking them all day, is what I'm saying. But if we don't manage to get that deal done, I feel a lot safer and secure now with Karius in goal. I mean, it would be his turn to play football this week, wouldn't it? I suppose if we're looking at the beginning of the season, with the Man City game coming around in the Champions League, that's no good for anyone. I think Klopp knows he's maybe dropped a bollock a little bit on that one, that it's not been good for Mignolet and it's not been good for Karius. He hasn't returned the favour to Mignolet. Mignolet's now the number 2 goalkeeper, and that's, you know, Karius plays the Champions League and the Premier League.
Yeah, he's out.
He's out. But no, it's good. I feel a lot better about him being in goal. And the only, just a final point, Gareth, on him is I feel that we attack better with him. His way of releasing the ball early, his distribution, all that sort of thing has improved this Liverpool side, along with, obviously, at the same time he came in, is the timely addition of Van Dijk with his distribution from the back as well.
Good to just see a positive keeper who's prepared to come off his line.
I think on just... Sorry about this.
It's all right. I mean, you know, I've got loads of time. I'm worried about you.
One thing that always...
James has got a proper job, haven't
I? Sorry, James. One thing that reminded me, well, the beginning of the season reminded me of, was that year at United when they had, it was Lindegaard and De Gea. So De Gea was young, not really... He needed some time to adapt to the league. Karius didn't really get that last season. He had a few games and made a few high-profile errors, so Klopp took him out the firing line. I think with Mignolet's form at the back end of last season, it allowed Klopp that opportunity to ease Karius in. And I think now we've got to the stage where he has, like with United and De Gea, and I'm not putting him on that level, obviously, but he's now gone, yeah, he's where I need him to be now. He can play every week.
And if he gets anywhere near De Gea, everyone's happy. Yeah, I mean, just to conclude on the Palace match, obviously, Mo does what Mo does best. Brilliant composure, puts it away. We're all happy we win the game. Hodgson's, you know, kicking around on the touchline, talking to himself, which is fantastic to see. And
just
you know,
that face rub, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was really.
He had a half face rub,
or the backwards butt. You know, pick your favourite Hodgson moment, really, of his fume. But it was fantastic to get one over him as well. We probably do need to get over that at some point, but it's probably not going to be any time soon. I mean, if people stop giving him a job, that'll probably help on that score. But in terms of where Liverpool are now, then, you know, 10 points over Chelsea, you know, a few wins away now from it being confirmed that we're back in the Champions League next season. A feel-good result at Palace as well in terms of coming from behind and winning dirty, as Klopp talked about it. The derby at the weekend, but of course first Manchester City. Once we got a little bit into this on Under the Lights, which is our preview show for this match, which is available to subscribers. But just for those that don't subscribe, I wanted to get you a little bit on the idea that, you know, Anfield doesn't play some kind of part in this tie, because there's been lots of attempts to play it down, but James, we all know different, don't we?
You certainly do, yeah. I think you've seen a few comments from City players who seem quite blasé about it, but I think you only have to go back to, I was in Guardiola's post-match press conference after the win, after Liverpool beat them at Anfield in January, and he said then, you know, he was asked about that 9-minute spell in the second half when Liverpool scored 3. And he said, you know, we were affected by the Anfield environment, and you know, if he thinks if that had an impact on City, then you know, you think what the atmosphere was like then compared to what it's going to be like on Wednesday night, he might want to dish out some earplugs to his players, because I think we've seen it so many times over the years, and people think, oh yeah, you know, they say that, they always say that, but you know, it really does. You know, you think back to that Europa League run to the final, you know, what it was like. United, obviously Dortmund was the pick a lot, but probably in terms of seeing a team intimidated and Liverpool inspired, probably Villarreal was the the kind of epitome of that, wasn't it? Because they were absolutely destroyed that night, and of course City are on a different level to that. You know, I'm not expecting them to fall to pieces on Wednesday night, but there's no question that can have a big part to play in Liverpool taking the initiative in the tie. It's just a shame, obviously, that, you know, whatever happens on Wednesday night, you know, I think, you know, there's still a massive job to do at the Etihad next Tuesday, but you know, I think that will have a part to play, and also the belief that Liverpool should take from what happened in that game in January, because, you know, in the end 4-3 looked like, you know, a real thriller, but it actually wasn't that close. You think Liverpool nodded off towards the end, and it became nervy when it shouldn't have been. At 4-1, Liverpool had chances to score 5 or 6, and it's just it's just an absolutely massive week ahead. Just can't wait for it. You think the 2 games sandwiched by a Merseyside derby. If you can't get excited about that, then you should probably take up a different hobby.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. That's what we're all in it for, isn't it, Dan? To be our football, to be getting excited about at this stage of the season. There's been too many, the last decade or so. There's been too many points at this point of the season where we've got nothing to play for.
Yeah.
And here we are, quarterfinals of the Champions League, pushing to secure qualification for next season as well. It's a pretty good time to be a Liverpool fan, isn't it?
I haven't been this excited for a game, honestly, since about 2006-07, and 2005, obviously, but we got kind of used to Champions League football for a bit, and we've been deprived of that for years, that now it's tangible, the excitement. And then Man City fans, like Gibbo's article on it was saying, trying to dismiss the atmosphere. Honestly, they haven't got a clue if they're trying to dismiss the atmosphere. It will affect players. There's nothing as beautiful or biblical as an angry cop getting behind the team, and if they're trying to stoke things up, then more fool them. There's a quote I was looking about it, because better players have been humbled than some of them Man City lads, and Cruyff's one where he says the Liverpool crowd are a mass force behind their team which sends shivers down my spine. There's no one club in Europe so united with their fans. It's going to be one of them nights.
The support and evidence as well that Leroy Sané is saying, I don't think we'll be affected by this. You were 3 months ago. It literally bothered you, and you fell to pieces for 10 minutes, and we scored 3 goals. So if you fall to pieces again for 10 minutes, there's a likelihood we could score 3 goals again. For me, quotes we were talking about on Talking Reds, I've just done with Craig Annan there. Frank Lampard, one of the best central midfielders the Premier League's ever had, said we couldn't handle it. We were smothered by the Kop. There's 10,000 more people in this ground now as well. That's something that people seem to be forgetting. That there's some noise in Anfield now. I would say the best atmosphere since probably 13-14. You could even argue that it was since 04-05 is the Man City game earlier in the season. I've never seen a Liverpool crowd kick every ball like that. So there's obviously been brilliant atmospheres, and
it was partisan, wasn't it?
That's it. There was a slight difference. It was almost like a point to prove from the Liverpool atmosphere that day. It's really hard to put into words how everyone was up for it, angry. And I know a lot of people getting out early. I think they're going to be getting.
I'm going to King Harry now.
it's like I'm having a Christmas Eve bevy tonight about it. It's so exciting. We're certainly up for this more than Manchester City feel up for it. The only thing I would say is we have got an opposition there who are probably the best side that the Premier League's ever had. We've got to consider the fact that there's some top professionals in it who may not be affected this time around. They've had a dress rehearsal, and they'll know what to expect. The only thing I would say to them is what you got last time, I think it's going to be turned up a few notches.
It is one of them, innit, Rick, just to wrap it up, but it is one of them where how'd you not be up for this? And you think with Klopp as the manager, with the players we've got, with the style we've got, home leg first as well, which I think most people are convincing themselves now is an advantage. It's what you're in it for, isn't it?
Yeah, like you said earlier, if you're not, get another hobby. I think the quotes have come out, people not going to be intimidated by the atmosphere. I think in the last 3 years I've seen that 4 or 5 times. Thomas Tuchel said it before Dortmund arrived. That work experience lad at Hoffenheim. Even United players before we played them in Europa League, they're all playing it down. And as Danny said earlier, we've been deprived of this kind of night for best part of 10 years. Right, this is what we're all in it for. Let's just all have a great time. It is the first leg, so nothing's decided. But I think if we can put ourselves in a strong position, the crowd's going to play a massive factor. There's
a good historical article today by Henry Winter in the Times as well. Whose reference it goes back to as far back as '77. He's talking about Saint Etienne being affected by Leeds. Leeds with Billy Bremner and the like being affected by it. Obviously, we know in modern history the other sides have been affected by it, but this isn't a new thing. We know what we're doing on these nights. There's added elements to it now as well, and I love the culture around the big game that sort of stems from 13-14 and meeting the bus, intimidating teams that way. I wonder if Man City will have something up the sleeve in terms of going against that, but there's only one entrance into Anfield. You know, you've got to go into that tunnel. It's going to be electric. Like, I've not seen so many people up for this so much. We've been talking about how our day's going to pan out for weeks in WhatsApp groups, and you know, lads that go to the game with just going, what time are you out on Wednesday? I'm out on Tuesday. We're out for this.
Yeah, City have even tried grassing us to the police, but you know, we'll see what happens. But yeah, it's a huge week for Liverpool. Everyone's really excited. Everyone's getting stuck in. There's going to be lots of podcasts, lots of videos. Check out our YouTube channel with Paul's done a couple of great plugs there for Talking Reds, which is our daily video that we do. We'll be getting excited on that. We got excited on here. We're getting excited on the subscriber shows as well. There's also a free podcast out there with Trent Alexander-Arnold talking about not only sort of getting excited for European matches, but also what it is to be a football player in this city, why it's important to put something back, and why it's important for Liverpool the city and Liverpool the club and Liverpool the people all to be as one. It's a fantastic listen from a very grounded lad, and also a great professional, and someone who can go far in the game. So give that a listen, share it, tell your mates, tell your ma, tell your dad. And also as well, for those that don't subscribe, we do obviously do an immediate post-match show after every game. It was free on Saturday after the Palace game, so you can give that a go. But also, just in case you were wondering, and thanks to everyone who's took part in this show, because we're going to end with this clip. In case you were wondering what it's like on the Anfield Wrap when we've won a really big European tie, well, here's a clip of us going mad after we beat Dortmund at Anfield. This was the one that we thought, you know, we can play this one. You might want to put the kids to bed before you play it.
Fuck this, we just fucking beat Dortmund by 4 goals to 3. This is the pink, it's Neil Atkinson, it is Adam Smith, it's Paul Senior, Kim Gordon, Phil Blundell, and Tom from Earache Records is in as well. John Gibbons is going to freestyle throughout the whole thing. Liverpool have just beat Borussia Dortmund by 4 of your goals to 3 of their goals. Fucking stitch that! Kim Gordon, I cannot remember at Anfield the next Chelsea's day quite like that in my life. It went absolutely right off, is that fair? Craig Hannon's joining, go on Kim.
Oh, Craig.
I think it's fair to say that I've never seen a match like that in my life, and I was in tears at the end, I think.
Did you have a cry?
I had a little cry.
I had a cry as well, so let's can I ask you if anyone else had a cry? Did anyone else have a cry?
A little bit, yeah.
I nearly did. You nearly cried, Paul Senior had a little cry, Kim had a little cry, I had a little cry. Kim, talk about the cry. The cry was something special. I had a cry.
I think it almost feels to me like it's a bit like Istanbul, where you're thinking like he's got the wrong team, but how can you say he's got the wrong team because we won?
Yeah.
And it's one of those. He probably did pick the wrong team. It was. I understand why he didn't pick Sturridge, although I'd have picked him. But the Allen shout's mad. But it's mad that he's won, and he's won the game, and you can talk.
And it's mad that Joe Allen's had a massive contribution to winning the game.
Exactly. So you can. It's the Didi Hamann thing where you can moan about, well, we'd have been better first half if Didi Hamann would have started in Istanbul, and we would have been better first half if Joe Allen would have started today. But we won the game, and the manager's in the results business, and fucking hell, we got a result. So, and also, you know, you can disagree with results all you want, and you can disagree with. Sorry, you can't disagree with results. You can disagree with performances, and you can disagree with decisions, but you know, at the end of the day, that's a small part of a manager's job, and what is a massive part of the manager's job is what he does to footballers. And he's just obviously done a huge amount for these footballers in terms of their belief and their terms of winning around, because to do that 3-1 down, you know, is not
when you beat outplayed.
Yeah, it's not what you do on a Wednesday, it's not what you do on a Thursday, it's not what team you pick, it's what you've been doing for 6 months, and drilling it into them, and drilling it into the fans as well. And everything he says is very deliberate, and everything he says his press comments, even though he says they don't matter, is very deliberate. And he's played an absolute blinder tonight, even though he's picked a team that I wouldn't have picked, and I was calling for all sorts at half time.
Do you think there's, John, just come back to you quickly, I know you're practically cuddling Paul Senior and that's what you want to do, but there's there is...
It's not the first lad I've next tonight.
I want to be in the middle there, you know. Me.
Won't be the last.
There is a lot to be said for the idea of what what you're able to do when you decide that football matches last for 94 minutes. That was my thing, and that was where, as I said before, but I was trying to say to you before about the idea that we decided we could almost take a breather for 5 or 80. When you know you're going to go to 84, when you know also that your teammates are going to go to 84, I think that's the big 94. Sorry, that's a big thing. That all of this Liverpool side knew they had 2 or 3 big pushes in them in the last sort of 8-9 minutes of the game, including added time. And I think that again, to talk about the manager, that comes massively from the manager, in the same way that, for instance, scoring late against Norwich is decided. And even then, I mean, I always said with Norwich, the funny thing about Norwich is Klopp had sat down and gone, fuck this, it's gone. And yet his sides had gone, no, we're not interested in that. You know, it really does feel like these lads are just going, let's just embrace every minute of this. And the atmosphere tonight was magic, and it was magic in a way that's defined by what the players did. I thought it was a real symbiosis. It wasn't just singing, it wasn't just let's just make some noise. There was a symbiosis tonight, I thought, John.
That primal roar, that's what it's about. That's what football's about. I genuinely feel bad for people who don't like football. I don't know who did this from the Anfield Rap account before, but somebody said before the game, team thoughts more surprised by the lack of Allen than Sturridge, but feels like a 14-man game tonight. It was John Gibbons.
John Gibbons
nailed it.
So, going back to John's point.
Shit off, dear listeners, John Gibbons currently has his top round his head. Like,
What I don't know about football,
lads. Hey, I've got John Gibbons' top here. Go on, Adam. All the best.
I'm wearing it like his own skin. He's just done a dab.
Adam's got a series of points.
I see Matt from the office has just walked in.
Let's let Adam make a series of points. Adam, go on. Craig first. Go on, Craig.
I see Matt just walked in. He doesn't know what's going on.
Adam Smith's trying to do proper football.
Sorry,
go on.
I can't.
John, update, ladies and gentlemen. John Gibbons now in his boxer shorts.
Carry on.
Pull his sheets.
What were you saying, mate? I'm sure it's very important. Adam, what were you saying?
I can't see this.